Imagine this. You wake up, grab your coffee, open up your portfolio, and realize that the global financial system as you have known it your entire life has just fundamentally ruptured overnight. The smoke is slowly clearing over the battered skyline of Tehran, but the real, fatal casualty isn't just military infrastructure or regional stability. It is the United States dollar. Right now, as we speak, thousands upon thousands of people are marching through the twisted, smoldering civilian rubble of Iran's capital. They are weeping, chanting, and mourning top political officials wiped out in the most unprecedented and aggressive U.S. and Israeli airstrikes of the 21st century. But while the mainstream media focuses entirely on the visceral explosions, the troop movements, and the political grandstanding, the true war, the war that will dictate your wealth, your purchasing power, and your future, is being fought in the quiet, sterile banking corridors of Moscow, Beijing, and the Persian Gulf. What if I told you that the bombs currently dropping in the Middle East are the exact perfect catalyst needed to permanently dethrone the global reserve currency? Are we watching the violent, fiery birth of a completely new financial world order? Welcome back to Dollar Endgame. If you want to understand the raw, unfiltered truth about global economics, geopolitics, and how these massive macro shifts directly impact your money, you are exactly where you need to be. We don't just read the headlines here. We peel back the narrative to expose the financial plumbing underneath. Today, we are taking a hard look at the escalating conflict in the Middle East, and more importantly, how it is serving as a massive accelerant for the BRICS de-dollarization master plan. Make sure you stay until the end, because the way this war is being funded will directly impact the inflation you feel at the grocery store next month. Let's dive in. Today marks day 21 of what history may very well remember as the war that broke the geopolitical camel's back. The short-term excursion promised by politicians is rapidly morphing into a grinding, devastating war of attrition. To understand the sheer scale of what is happening, we need to rewind briefly to February 28, 2026. On that morning, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. In just the first 12 hours alone, coalition forces executed nearly 900 distinct strikes. The skies over the Middle East were dominated by B-2 stealth bombers and F-35 fighter jets launching from regional bases in Qatar and Bahrain, as well as aircraft carriers stationed in the Arabian Sea. They systematically targeted air defense installations, command and control centers, and advanced weapons storage facilities in major Iranian cities, including Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Bushehr. Fast forward to today, day 21, and the situation on the ground has spiraled into absolute chaos. The streets of Tehran are echoing with funeral chants and the wailing of sirens. For days, desperate rescue workers have been digging through massive piles of civilian rubble in the eastern outskirts of the capital. They were searching through the wreckage of a residential compound after a targeted Israeli airstrike obliterated the area. The target of that massive strike was none other than Ali Larijani, Iran's top security official and the ultimate backroom power broker of the regime. Ali Larijani was not just another name on a military roster. He was a scion of a leading clerical family, the pragmatic architect of Iran's internal security framework, and a man deeply embedded in the theocratic system of government. Just weeks prior to his death, Larijani had boldly announced the formation of an interim leadership council, warning secessionist groups of severe consequences and accusing the U.S. and Israel of trying to dismantle the nation entirely. He was killed while simply visiting his daughter in a Tehran suburb, an assassination that has sent unparalleled shockwaves through the highest echelons of the Islamic Republic. As a fascinating side note on how interconnected our world is, one of Larijani's daughters had previously been dismissed from a medical teaching position at Emory University in the United States, following intense protests by Iranian-American activists over her father's role in suppressing domestic demonstrations. Now, Larijani is dead, and his funeral has become a massive nationwide rallying cry. The death toll across the country has already officially surpassed 1,700 people, and the physical devastation is staggering. American service members have also tragically lost their lives. The U.S. Central Command confirmed 3 service members died and 5 others sustained serious injuries during recent regional operations. And yet, the Pentagon is not backing down. They are actively promising to execute the most intense strikes yet, targeting the deepest layers of Iranian military infrastructure. But here is where it gets interesting. Zoom out to the bigger picture. The military conflict is horrifying, yes, but the economic retaliation is what threatens to rewrite the global world order. While the bombs continue to fall, a much quieter, far more dangerous chess move is being played in the warm waters of the Persian Gulf. For decades, the entire foundation of American economic supremacy has rested on the petrodollar system. It is a brilliant, albeit fragile, mechanism. The United States provides military security to Gulf nations like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. In return, these nations agree that their massive oceans of oil will be priced and traded exclusively in U.S. dollars. This creates an artificial, perpetual global demand for the greenback, allowing the U.S. government to run massive deficits and export its inflation to the rest of the world. Iran is currently attempting to rip up that agreement at gunpoint. In direct retaliation for the ongoing airstrikes, Tehran has activated a brutal, asymmetrical economic war. They have already launched missile strikes that heavily damaged a critical liquefied natural gas export facility in Qatar, sending immediate shockwaves and supply worries through global energy markets. But that was merely a warning shot. The real masterstroke is taking place right now at the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important and vulnerable oil choke point. A massive percentage of the globe's energy supply flows through this narrow waterway. Iran has begun aggressively deploying mine-laying ships to trap the waters, forcing the U.S. military into a frantic scramble, striking Iranian naval vessels just to keep the vital sea lanes from closing entirely. However, Iran just played its ultimate trump card. In a move that caught Western analysts completely off guard, Iranian officials announced that oil tankers will actually be permitted to pass through the Strait of Hormuz unharmed. But there is a massive catch. They will only allow safe passage provided that the oil on board is sold in Chinese yuan. Read that again, and let the gravity of that statement sink in. The oil must be sold in Chinese currency. This is a direct, calculated, and potentially fatal hit on the petrodollar system. Suddenly, the Persian Gulf countries are trapped in an impossible geopolitical vice. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are officially U.S. allies, but behind closed doors, absolute panic is setting in. They are watching advanced American weaponry destroy their neighbor while simultaneously realizing that their own economic lifeblood, their oil exports, are completely at the mercy of a desperate, cornered Iranian military that is demanding a pivot to Asia. The financial markets are reacting violently. Global energy prices are smashing record highs, with Brent crude briefly touching $119 a barrel in a terrifying intraday spike. Analysts who previously laughed at the idea of oil hitting $200 a barrel are no longer treating it as a far-fetched joke. They are actively drawing up contingency plans for an environment where the strait remains effectively closed to dollar-denominated trade. If that happens, the supply shock will trigger an inflationary tsunami across the United States and Europe that makes the post-pandemic inflation look like a walk in the park. This brings us to the ultimate beneficiaries of this global chaos, the BRICS nations. The war in Iran is the exact catalyst the BRICS alliance has been waiting for. You see, the weaponization of the US dollar, the freezing of sovereign assets, and the overwhelming display of American military might are no longer viewed by the global South as merely security issues. They are viewed as an existential financial threat. If the United States can completely isolate a nation from the SWIFT system and bomb its infrastructure into rubble, what stops them from doing it to anyone else? Look at the scoreboard right now. Russia is actually winning the economic fallout of this war. Moscow has pocketed an estimated 7.7 billion euros in excess fossil fuel revenue in just 2 weeks because the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes have sent global oil prices skyrocketing to their benefit. At the same time, the broader BRICS agenda of total de-dollarization is being turbocharged beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Russia and China have completely decoupled from Western financial hegemony. They are currently settling an astonishing 90% of their bilateral trade in rubles and yuan. They are proving in real time that you do not need the U.S. banking system to run a massive, industrialized economy or to conduct cross-border trade. The infrastructure for a post-dollar world is not a futuristic concept. It is up and running today. China's cross-border interbank payment system, known as CIPS, now safely connects thousands of banks across nearly 200 countries, bypassing Western surveillance entirely. Furthermore, the mBridge platform, a decentralized cross-border settlement system utilizing digital national currencies, processed over $55 billion in transactions late last year. The BRICS Unit, a proposed alternative international settlement mechanism backed by commodities rather than fiat promises, is gaining unprecedented urgency. The architecture is built, the testing phases are complete, and now the war in Iran is forcing countries to actually use the emergency exits. Why is this transition happening so fast? Because the math of the current war is utterly terrifying for the U.S. Treasury. The United States is currently burning between $1 and $2 billion every single day to fund this conflict. Every day, billions of dollars are quite literally vaporized to fund jet sorties, missile interceptors, logistics, and heavy munitions. That money has to come from somewhere. The U.S. government does not have a massive surplus sitting in a vault. It has to borrow every single cent. The supply of U.S. treasuries is going to skyrocket precisely at a time when the rest of the world is desperately looking for alternative financial lifeboats. Foreign buyers are stepping back. Financial experts are pointing out the glaring structural problem. Why would international buyers purchase American debt when the currency is being aggressively weaponized? Market insiders are already noting that there is virtually no organic interest in the 30-year Treasury bond until the yield pushes north of 5%. Every single billion the U.S. burns in the skies over the Middle East systematically narrows the dollar's lead as the only viable option for global trade settlement. It is a vicious, inescapable debt spiral. The U.S. prints money to fund the military, which causes inflation, which forces interest rates higher, which makes the debt more expensive to service, which requires more money printing. All the while, the BRICS nations sit back, trade in local currencies, and watch the empire bleed itself dry. So, what happens when inflation reignites due to $200 oil and the Federal Reserve is completely trapped by astronomical wartime deficit spending? The traditional fiat system buckles under the pressure. This is where the crypto and gold markets enter the endgame. Central banks around the world, particularly in Asia and the Middle East, have been aggressively hoarding physical gold at record paces over the last few years. They clearly see the writing on the wall. Gold is a Tier 1 seizure-resistant asset that sits entirely outside the traditional fiat banking network. But in our modern, hyper-connected world, moving pallets of physical gold to settle daily international trade is heavy, slow, and completely impractical. Enter Bitcoin and the broader cryptocurrency market. As the geopolitical theater descends into total chaos, the value proposition of a decentralized, neutral, stateless digital commodity has never been clearer or more urgent. When nation-states can weaponize the SWIFT banking system and sanction your sovereign reserves with the push of a button, Bitcoin becomes the ultimate, uncensorable insurance policy. We are already seeing major moves as sanctioned entities and sovereign wealth funds quietly look to decentralized networks to settle cross-border transactions under the radar. Crypto isn't just a speculative tech stock play anymore. In the context of Day 21 of a massive Middle Eastern conflict, it is a literal matter of national security. Bitcoin is the digital lifeboat for capital fleeing a burning fiat ship. So, let's bring it all back home. How does this massive geopolitical shift affect you, the viewer? The U.S. consumer is standing directly in the blast radius of this economic shockwave. When the cost to safely transport goods skyrockets because the Strait of Hormuz is politically gated by the Chinese yuan, everything at your local grocery store gets significantly more expensive. When the U.S. government prints an extra $2 billion a day to fund an overseas war without raising taxes, the purchasing power of your paycheck is quietly, invisibly diluted. The short-term excursion promised by military leaders is over. It is a fairy tale. And the longer this grinds on, the more time the BRICS alliance has to solidify a financial fortress that permanently locks the United States out of the very global trade system it built after World War II. We are witnessing the geopolitical pivot of the century. The civilian rubble in Tehran isn't just concrete, glass, and steel. It is the fractured, crumbling foundation of American financial hegemony. Will the BRICS unit completely replace the US dollar by the end of this year? No, the dollar is too deeply entrenched to vanish overnight, but the leak in the boat has turned into a gaping, rushing hole, and the water is rising fast. You need to position yourself accordingly. You must understand the macro forces at play, and you must secure your wealth in hard, scarce assets that governments cannot endlessly print, arbitrarily freeze, or bomb out of existence. This is the harsh, undeniable reality of the dollar endgame. Thank you so much for watching. In our next video, we are going to dive incredibly deep into exactly how China's mBridge system works on a technical level, and how you can specifically protect your portfolio from the coming wave of central bank digital currencies. You absolutely do not want to miss that breakdown. Before you go, let me know in the comments below. Do you actually think oil will hit $200 a barrel this month? And if so, how are you hedging against that inflation? Drop your thoughts down there. I read every single one of them. If you found value in today's deep dive, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you are notified the absolute second we post a new update. Stay safe out there, stay informed, and I will see you in the next one.